Top 5 things I'm curious to hear from Media Days. This is all over the map, all the Power 5 conference Media Days. Number 5 in the conference with seems to be the happiest together overall. Do people feel Michigan is the new class of the Big Ten, or do they feel it's just a 2-year blip and that Ohio State may retake that? I'm curious what the buzz around the Big Ten is if Michigan has really taken that step and they might be running the league like Ohio State was for a long time.
Whether they go ahead, Craig.
No, go ahead.
Whether they do that, extend it and sustain it remains to be seen because there's good teams in that conference. But this has not been a fluke.
No, it's not.
What they've done the last couple of years is they have been better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've proved it on the field that they've been better, and, they're in a good little run right now. I mean, I think this is probably a conversation that if you're a Big Ten fan, you probably had it, Deb, but me being an outsider, I haven't really, listened in on those conversations. I think you got to at least have the discussion a little bit, but no, I think, Ohio State did it for so long that I'm not ruling them out until Michigan reels off like 5 of these bad boys in a really contained amount of time because the Buckeyes aren't going anywhere. They just lost a little bit of their shine because they're not unbeatable, when it comes to their rival. But, I mean, they're making a case to be that eventually. I don't know if they're quite there just yet.
Yeah. Number 4, is the ACC really happy together, which they're going to say they are, but I'm curious to hear the nuances in everybody's response to the inevitable questions that they'll have again, even though all that seemingly was resolved at the meetings, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, but it's an issue that's going to be out there, especially depending on what's going on in the Pac-12, which will be around that same time, how other conferences will react to it, especially one like the ACC, who will have the same issues that the Big 12 and Pac-12 did during all this time. I'm curious to see what, school-to-school people respond to that by. What do they feel? How do they feel? Who gives the most political answer? Who gives the one that's maybe the most honest about it? Like that's an issue that
someone will slip and say something.
Yeah.
Probably more likely the ones who are at the top level who are still looking at what they want.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like they kind of put out a fire a couple months ago, but they left it smoldering still. It's not all the way out, and so they've calmed it down, but don't realize there's still a fire burning there, and that just the right accelerant could set it off once again. So yeah, they were able to contain any further public outcries or things like that, but it doesn't seem like it would take much to probably get that right back in the media and at the forefront, Miami or Florida State or whoever might be popping off this time around. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. They're happy, ... for now. I think is kind of probably how most people feel about it, but there's certainly still some lingering, what's to come with this whole thing.
I'm wondering if somebody says, well, we're happy because we have to be.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
that's
don't have
the
a
thing,
choice.
though, is you really don't have a choice. I think once a choice presents itself, then that's a whole nother conversation. But until that occurs, then you really don't have you don't have a choice but to be happy with where you are unless you just want to be totally miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 3, whatever plans Brett Yormark has, I'm curious to hear from the horse's mouth what's going to go on. Of course, we've got a couple weeks. There could be a lot of changes.
Who will be the most
weeks
in demand among the commissioners at these media days?
George Kliavkoff?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And I would think Yormark, all those Sankeys are going to always have that. The new guy, Petiti. But I would think, I would think it's going to be Kliavkoff and then Yormark. Yep.
Yeah. I just curious about this. Look, the Big 12, things are going well right now, so there's not really much, controversy about, and a lot of this is going to be expansion questions and this and that, and who knows by July 10th if we'll be able to put more of a finer point on some of that stuff, but just curious to hear what the next wave is and what he's going to say at Media Days.
Yeah, what cards can he play besides realignment and, teasing? Because I think there's definitely a marketing aspect to this of you're keeping your name out there, you're keeping, potential dominoes in play. And he's a smart guy. I think having the realignment piece out there keeps the Big 12 being talked about. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. I also think there's legitimate interest in trying to expand the conference if at all possible. So, yeah, I mean, I think this part of this will depend on, what does happen between now and then, especially on the realignment front. But wouldn't surprise me for him to announce like some baseball tournament on the moon or something like that, because he's trying to find every way he can to keep the conference relevant, to make some money. And so, I wouldn't be surprised to hear something like that.
I would love to be in that pitch meeting where somebody comes in and goes, you know what nobody's doing? Moon. And he's like,
Yep.
Quit drilling, you hit oil. We'll figure it out.
That's exactly right.
We'll figure it out. Number 2, this is the one that's school-specific. Now, at SEC Media Days, you could certainly talk about the schedule and all that, which they will. They absolutely will. But to me, that's secondary. I'm curious, how does Jimbo Fisher, when asked about Bobby Petrino and coming through spring and now he's had some time, does he answer that question differently than as aggressively annoyed by the people as he was when he answered it before? I mean, it was, of all the things that, about Jimbo Fisher is that he's not going to let another guy call the plays, and then now he is. And when they asked about the, transition and the actual...
Will he be defensive?
Will he be defensive?
Or
he got
paranoid.
defensive. Or will he, move into it and be like, look, I wasn't, we're trying to figure that out. Now we have all that. I'm curious to hear how he answers that question this time around, because it will give me a little insight on how comfortable he feels moving into the season.
I agree.
Yeah, and where his ego is, how in check is that? And it's pretty important, I think, at this juncture for his ego to be as in check as possible, which I know is easier said than done. But, he didn't necessarily handle that the best way. And you know what? If you're going to make a hire, expect the damn questions that follow that hire.
Yeah.
What is the whole – what did you think people were going to ask about when you hired Bobby freaking Petrino to come in here and help fix your offense? Jimbo – I don't, do the whole daily thing of they're going to fire him soon and all of that kind of stuff. But, I do think he's at a very integral turning point right now for the program, for himself, and just the whole direction. And especially when you realize hey, the neighbors arrived, a couple of old neighbors have arrived and they're not super far behind you. They're basically coming in step with you. And if you don't watch out and you're not careful, you could very easily find yourself back in that situation that you didn't want to be in 20 years ago.
One that you have a total complex about, and the other one I think you beat 2 or 3 times in the history of your, of their conference association.
I'll say this about that, though. When they did go to the SEC, there was a peace. And they did not have to worry about what was going on in Austin. That doesn't mean they weren't paying attention, but all of a sudden, damn it, here's that loud neighbor, in the mansion, moving right next to us. And so, that's no question going to be a part of it.
Yeah. And number 1, what does the Pac-12 say if nothing has changed? If they have nothing to report, if they're still in limbo, how do they handle it?
No additions. There's no subtractions.
If they're still in limbo, if they're still exactly where they are today at their media days
in July, late July,
July, how do they handle it when you actually, especially Kleofkoff, when you now have to talk?
Well, everybody knows you don't negotiate on summer vacation time. So, then we'll get into the season, and then you don't negotiate during the season. Then it's Christmas. Remember, Christmas mattered last year. Actually, that really was a thing last year where Christmas interrupted the negotiations. And then, I don't know, we hit January 1st. That's an off day, obviously. I don't know. Maybe we find ourselves in mid-January having the same conversations all over again. But, really, I don't know what you say other than just – we're still working on it, I guess, is all you could really say. But that is going to be probably one of the most, if not number 1, on your list, and maybe for others as well. That's going to be the number 1 most wondered thing as we head into these media days, because that's the domino of all the dominoes that could affect everybody else in some form or fashion, for better or worse. So it's not just a Pac-12 question. It's a Big 12. It's an ACC. It's in a roundabout way, SEC and Big 10 question as well. So, it's going to be very interesting if they don't have something to offer up at this point.
Yeah, George Kleofkoff is going to have to talk.
Yeah.
He's going to have to.
Right.
And for his sake, I'm sure he's praying he has something to say. Because if he doesn't, then whether it's his fault or not, he's going to be, in a hole. Mm-hmm. And that's not fun.
No, and to not have something ready. I know there's been this various discussion about timelines and things and all of that, but I think even the most ardent supporters of where they are and what they're doing and all that would say, all right, if we're not sitting here announcing something by media days, that's getting a little crazy. That's going to be very interesting to see what he has to offer up.
Who's going to go cover the game on the moon? That's the next part, but that's right. That kind of idea without a doubt. All right, thank you to everybody. Bobby B.